other objections to title? Chair hears none. Title is agreed to. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Lynn, Representative Breiser, for opening remarks on House File 2372.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, if joint legal custody is awarded to both parents in a divorce proceeding, this bill states that the court shall award joint physical care upon the request of either parent unless the court determines that joint physical care is not in the best interest of the child. Mr. Speaker, this concludes my opening remarks.
There is an amendment. The clerk call up the amendment.
H 8035 by Momsen of Clinton.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Clinton, Representative Momsen, for opening remarks on Amendment H 8035.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment requires a court to provide for joint custody. Current law allows the court the option of providing joint custody for the child. That concludes my opening comments.
Is there discussion? The chair recognizes the gentleman from Woodbury, Representative Dawson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Iowa House. I would question whether or not this amendment is germane to the bill.
The gentleman from Woodbury and the gentleman from Clinton, please approach the well. Representative Dawson, your point is well taken. The amendment is not germane. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Clinton, Representative Momsen, for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules.
The gentleman from Clinton moves to suspend the rules to immediately consider Amendment H 8035. This requires 51 votes. A record has been requested by the gentleman from Woodbury, Representative Dawson, second by the gentleman from Blackhawk, Representative Kressick. This is now a record roll call vote. This motion requires 51 votes. Clerk will open the machine and receive your vote. Stannerson votes aye. Eisenhart votes no. Meyer votes no. Bennett votes no. Gaines votes no. Ruff votes no. Sands votes aye. Hanusa votes aye. Maxwell votes aye. Upmeyer votes aye. Have you all now voted? Clerk close the machine and record your vote. The House by terms results of the vote. Those voting aye 52, nay 44, absent not voting for. The motion to suspend the rules is adopted. We are now on Amendment H 8035. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Clinton, Representative Mobson, for closing remarks on Amendment H 8035.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When you first look at this amendment, it looks real simple. All we're doing is changing one word from may to shall. But the lives of our children, this is a big deal. So when we begin the conversation of joint custody, let's start it on a level playing field and treat both parents equally. That concludes my comments.
The gentleman from Clinton moves adoption of Amendment H 8035. All those in favor shall say aye. All those opposed shall say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The amendment is adopted. We're now back on House File 2372 as amended. Is there further discussion? Chair recognizes the gentleman from Woodbury, Representative Dawson.
I stand in opposition of the final bill in this final form. The Iowa State Bar Association is opposed to the riser bill about joint shared physical care. There are many reasons why that should not be adopted as the starting point in all custody cases. As many of you know, I've worked in juvenile law my entire career here in Iowa, and I've specialized in custody cases. You should always start in child custody cases about where the child is going to live with the best interest of the child as the first factor. When you take that out and move down to some other factors saying that you always have to consider parents equal, you're not really looking at the facts of every case, and you're presuming in the law something that doesn't apply most of the time. So this is a presumption we should not support today, and I would ask others to vote no as well.
Chair recognizes the lady from Polk, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I rise in opposition to this bill also. The Iowa law already says that the court may award joint physical care to both joint custodial parents upon the request of either parent. You cannot, well, I would have a very hard time by saying that they shall award joint physical custody, because that means that a child shall move from house to house. It means that the parents shall work together regardless of the animosity between them. It says they shall work together unless one of the parents can prove that the other one is not, it's not in the best interest of the child to have the other one have joint physical custody. Joint legal custody is another story. Joint legal custody gives parents, both parents, the right to make decisions for the child, where they go to school, what their medical care is, all of those kind of things. But you move to joint physical custody, and that has to do with where the child lives. And it's not always in the best interest of the child to live from house to house to house. In fact, I did some research last night, and in most of the cases many of the cases, let me not overstate this, where there is joint physical custody, the children end up living primarily with one parent or the other. I would prefer to leave the may award in rather than the shall award, and let the courts decide what the best interest of the child is. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Lynn, Representative Reiser, for closing remarks on House File 2372.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to address a couple points that have been made. There is nothing in this bill that would preclude a judge doing what is in the best interest of the child. In fact, it just says that they shall award joint physical care to both joint custodial parents upon the request of either parent, unless the court determines that joint physical care is not in the best interest of the child. So the four Hansen criteria are still in play to determine what is in the best interest of the child. And in fact, in the Hansen case, The court said, all other things being equal, however, we believe that joint physical care is most likely to be in the best interest of the child. You know, it's interesting, if you look at the Iowa Code, if you go to the definitions in 598.1, it actually defines best interest of the child. And what it says there is that is the opportunity for maximum continuous physical and emotional contact possible with both parents. That is basically the definition of joint physical care. So it makes sense for the starting point to be joint physical care. This is the most equitable way to start the discussions. And then, of course, the judges and the parties have all the authority they need there to decide whether or not that is actually in the best interests of the child. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a good bill for Iowa and Iowans, and I move the bill.
The gentleman from Lynn moves the bill be read for the last time and placed on its passage. Are there objections? Chair hears none. The clerk will read.
House File 2372, a bill for an act relating to the preference for joint custody and joint physical care of a child in awarding custody, being enacted by the General Assembly of the State of Iowa.
The question now is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed shall vote no. The clerk will open the machine and receive your vote. Stannerson votes aye. Vanderlinden votes aye. Gaines votes no. Ruff votes no. Bennett votes aye. Hanusa votes aye. Upmeyer votes aye. Have you all now voted? Clerk close machine, record your vote. The House pay attention to the results of the vote. Those voting aye 56, nay 41, absent not voting 3. The bill having received a constitutional majority is declared to have passed the House. Are there objections to the title?